up, people? How you doing? I'm having a fantastic damn day. Welcome back to the channel. So obviously, people have been asking for Napoli tactics, and obviously, they've recently fired their coach, Rudy Garcia. So he's out the door, and the new man is Walter Mazzarri, who has been brought back to the club. I mean, he was the coach of Napoli from like 2009 to I think around 2012, somewhere around that period. So he has been at the club before, and I think he will more or less try and use those tactics, maybe a bit more of a modernized tactic for this team going forward. They do have the style and the system to potentially play the 3-5-2 formation, which is what you see on your screen right here. So yes, I will be explaining those ways that you can replicate those set of tactics in the game FC24. Obviously, it's all speculation at the moment because there hasn't been a single game that he's played yet with Napoli. So we don't know if he's going to go with a 4-3-3 or potentially this lineup. I'm just going with what he has done in the past. And he is very much well known for this system right here. So it leads me to believe that he will most certainly, at least in my opinion, be playing a system like this. So for the formation going forward, I haven't changed anything whatsoever. I've just gone with a 3-5-2. And that means it's one goalkeeper, 3 centre-backs, 2 DMs, 2 wide midfielders, 1 attacking midfielder, and then, of course, 2 strikers. Now, with the tactics for Walter Mazzarri, I think what best suits him and how he tries to get his team to play is to always make sure that they're defensively solid, and then they'll look to try and attack the opposition on the break. So counter-attacking tactical vision best suits what I think he will try and implement at Napoli. For the defensive style, drop back best suits what this team needs, especially in the defensive sector. Of course, making sure that the structure and the integrity of the formation at the back especially is very much intact more times than not. The team width, however, is set to 20, making it very hard for the opposition to try and play through the center of the park. Obviously, you are trying to clog those central areas quite effectively, but that does leave space on those wider regions for those crosses to be whipped in. But, of course, you are playing with wide midfielders / wingbacks who will definitely be taking up a bit more of a wingback approach. You are playing fullbacks in those wider regions, so they do have a bit more defensive integrity to them, and they will then try and prevent those crosses being whipped in. The depth is set to 45, which is a mid-block. It does very much suit what Walter Mazzarri tries to implement with all of his teams, whether it's been Watford, whether it's been the first time with Napoli. He's always tried to instill a mid-block, making it very hard for the opposition to try and fit runners in behind. For the offense and the build-up play specifically, the long ball does fit hand in hand with what you're trying to do with the counter-attack, getting those long balls in behind, whether it's played out from the back, one of your centre-backs, or potentially from your midfield into that front line to try and get them in behind the opposition's back line. It makes the most sense. Of course, you will also try and look to spring those long balls into those wider regions to try and supply your attacking fullbacks in those wider areas to try and get crosses into the box for your attackers. For the chance creation, forward runs best suits what this team is all about. Of course, they have a load of pace in those wider regions as well as in the center of the park with those 2 strikers. So you do want to try and get them on the ball as much as possible, as well as trying to make them make those runs in behind, trying to exploit the opposition's backline. The width is set to 60, which means that naturally this formation is not very widespread. Your outlet balls in those wider regions is going to be your wider midfielders. So they will look to try and get on the ball as much as possible, try and stretch the horizontal plane of the midfield especially, and try and open up a bit more space and gaps for your midfield to try and work with. Of course, they will be very much moving all the time in transition, out of transition, and whatnot. So they do need a bit more space. But naturally, you don't want to have too much stretch or pull on the wider regions of the field, as it does more or less detract from the style of football that you are trying to play. As for players in the box, I have set it to 7, which means that the likes of Kvaratskhelia as well as Osimhen will be occupied with either your attacking midfielder or potentially one of your deeper lying 6s who will make that charge into the box. They do tend to do this quite often, and I did see and I have watched clips of Walter Mazzarri's first Napoli stint where he would implore his midfield, especially the deeper lying ones, to try and make those attacking runs into the box. As for corners and free kicks, as per always, it is set to 4. So starting off with the instructions at the back, I think the goalkeeper situation, of course, you are playing a mid-block, so I think, you don't really need him making those runs off of his line or saving outside of the box, claiming that ball. You do have 3 decently paced centre-backs who can definitely make those recovery runs, can claim the ball. But most importantly, I think for Marais, he will need to be able to claim those crosses. And it's a very good trait that he does have for Napoli. Last season especially, he was very, very good at times. Just being able to claim the ball, soak up the pressure, alleviate the stress on the back line, and then play it out from the back. So that's why I've gone with that instruction set for the goalkeeper. As for your three centre-backs, there's no real changes to them. They're all set to their base set of instructions. Moving on into the midfield, though, Lobotka as well as Anguissa, they are set to the same set of instructions as well. So both of them are set to cut passing lanes as well as having a balanced attack. Like I said, having that deeper midfielder making that advanced run potentially into the box at times does create a lot of havoc, a lot of overload opportunities for your offensive structure going forward. As for the interceptions, it is set to aggressive, so aggressively protecting that backline when need be, chasing the ball, making sure that the opposition are very much hurried in the central areas of the field. As for the positioning freedom, deep line playmaker, allowing them to be able to get onto the ball from the back line or collecting it from the goalkeeper and then progressing it nice and high up the field. And then the defensive position, both of them are set to cover the center. As you can see here for Anguissa, he is also set to the same set of instructions, like I said earlier. Out wide to the wide midfield. Now, both of them, again, have the same set of instructions. You want to try and mirror what the left and the right-hand side do with each other. So for this situation, of course, you want them to be a bit more of a wing-back player. You don't really want them being too far attacking. So they will be instructed to come back on defense, looking to try and cover those wider regions of the field. For the chance creation, I have set it to balance and not just to stay wide, because there are times where you see that one of the fullbacks / wide midfielders will tuck in and create like a back four. So you still want to have that moment with either your left or your right midfielder, having them have the ability to tuck in when need be. And then in turn, what that does is it allows the other one just to stay a bit higher up the field and then potentially be an outlet ball going forward. Both of them will be set to getting in behind. It does go hand in hand with the forward runs approach. You want your forwards as well as your wide midfielders in this case making those runs, trying to exploit the opposition's backline with those runs in behind. And then finally, aggressive interceptions are set to be on for them, as well as having a balanced approach for their crossing runs. You want them to be sometimes in the box attacking those crosses, other times on the edge of the area trying to facilitate for others. As you can see for the captain, Di Lorenzo, he's got the same set of instructions as well. Moving on to the number 10 position, Zielinski. Now, I've modeled Zielinski's role very much off of what Marek Hamšík was for Napoli back in the day. So if you know who that is, a big up to you. You are a real one. But if you don't, you're obviously too young for it. Nonetheless, he is set to have a comeback on defense approach. So he will look to try and drop deep, link up play quite effectively with the 2-6s. But most importantly, he does have a very balanced role when getting into the box. So sometimes making those runs, other times looking just to hang a bit further back out of the box, waiting for the ball to potentially ricochet and fall to the edge of the area where he will look to try and attack it and potentially get off shots, or otherwise look to try and rotate and get a better opportunity for the offense. His positioning freedom is set to free roam. You want him to be able to pop up in those little pockets of space in and around the opposition's box and the opposition's half, being the primary playmaker for this team going forward. And then finally, interceptions is set to aggressive. Moving on into our forward line now, starting off with Kvaratskhelia. I don't know if the likes of Kvara will be playing as a striker. I think he will. Very much modeled off of what the likes of Lorenzo Insigne did for Napoli all those years ago, in that front line especially. So I could potentially see him playing here, or potentially playing as that number 10. I'm not exactly sure just yet, but I think more or less the front line best suits him, which is why I've gone with him in this role. But he will be set to drift wide, so you'll still have that very much a winger approach where he drifts into those wider spaces and then attacks the opposition at an angle. But most importantly, his attacking runs are set to false line. So he will still look to naturally get in behind and trying to exploit that opposition backline. But at the same time, he will look to try and drop slightly deeper off of the backline, drawing players out of position, opening up a bit more space for his strike counterpart in Osimhen to try and work with and work into that space. But at the same time, helping the likes of Zielinski with the playmaking abilities. His interceptions is set to aggressive, as well as his defensive support is set to basic. So like I say, with the false nine, him dropping off does help, but other times he can look to just hang slightly high up the field, link up play a bit more effectively, and also be a bit of an outlet ball going forward, especially with the counter-attack. And then finally, we've got the likes of Victor Osimhen. He's set to have a balanced width, so sometimes having the ability to drift into those wider regions, but more importantly, you want him attacking those central areas a bit more with those crosses being whipped into the box. He is your number one supply man, tucking those balls into the back of the net. His attacking runs is set to get in behind. He does have a load of pace. He also has a very good hold-up game. His ability with his back-to-goal, being able to back into the opposition, hold up the play, and then link up quite effectively is also there. But most importantly, you want him being able to quickly transition, and getting in behind best suits that. His interceptions is set to aggressive, which means that just like with Kvaratskhelia, he will look to aggressively press the back line as well as the goalkeeper. And then finally, for his defensive support, just like the other striker, he will look to sometimes dropping off the back line, allowing to soak up as much defensive pressure as can be, adding to that defensive shield that they will look to try and implement at times. And then other times, he will look to try and stay a bit higher up the field, be a bit more of the out there ball going forward. So yes, people, that is my version of what I think Walter Mazzarri might do with Napoli going forward. Of course, it's a complete prediction of what he might do. I've just tried to connect the dots where I think that they will connect. Honestly, he could play a back four system. He could play a back three system. We're not sure right now. We'll only find out next weekend when, obviously, club football returns. And then once that's done, I will then have a few more games to assess. And then I will come back to this and reassess the Napoli tactics. So until then, please hit that like button down below. Subscribe if you are new. That would be fantastic. The road to 3K is on. Hopefully before the end of December. That would be great too. But until the next time, my dudes, I hope you have a fantastic damn day. I'm out.